Okay, so decided to make some changes for this one reading because when I was recording it live with this person, what happened was there was a background sound I was playing, but that one sound was from someone else's channel, like it's their compositions. So I thought, okay, well, I checked it and apparently they also sell their stuff. So I was like, okay, then I can't play that because that would be not asking their permission, but you know, wah wah. But anyways, here's the one, the actual reading, well, not the actual, but you know, I guess you can say the replacement reading for the actual chart. But it's okay. It's, you know, it'll help them, and it'll help this person to go through it, but it'll be a little bit more detailed, I suppose, because I'll be able to also go through it myself. And yeah, so we'll just, you know, it's still fun, right? So, anyway, so here it goes. Okay, so we have here his chart. Okay. Okay. See, where did we start off? Okay, so I kind of did some educational stuff for him, like when I was reading it, but this time I'm just gonna go read through it, but a little bit of more informational stuff, like, you know, educatey sort of feel. But usually, of course, we start with the ascendant, right? So he definitely appears like kind of very kind of, I guess you can say, he's hard to read, right? He's saying that this is right here, this ascendant in Cancer is hard to read. He has the same ascendant as I do. People find it hard to read me as well. They don't know what to say, think of. We kind of appear also kind of, there's a definite watery sort of feel. People see us like we like to dress comfortably, or at least for us, we like to package ourselves comfortably. You know, that is the first house thing, but it's also the ascendant. And to clarify that when it comes to the orientation points, the ascendant, descendant, all those things, those are, every house has a cusp, right? So every cusp kind of behaves like, as you can, I guess you could, kind of like the face, the mask, the role, the sort of the first layer you see kind of thing, the first layer of experience, the first layer of the fact, the first layer, whatever. Right? If you get what I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. If you don't, you don't. I don't know. So that's the ascendant. So we appear to the world, not what they think of us, how we want them to think of us, right? It's also our body, because that is also with the first house. The body is the discovery of the first house. This is when you were born. This is how you were, you know, it's like you came to be, and then you kind of discover things. You put things in your mouth, you taste things. You know, it's like basically like a baby. But it's also like the first, like, your things that you encounter the first time. Any sort of, like, you know, when you say there's a first time for everything, that's a first house thing, right? It's ruled by Mars, never ruled by Aries. So it's always about the initiative. It's always about something new. It's always about something this, okay? His first house, however, is empty. So we're not going to worry about that. I told him that it's like when the house is empty, it means that's something you're not really here to learn. Your soul contract, your whole chart, at least that's the way I see it, is not, it's not something your soul chose to work on. It's not something that it's going to be important. It's not, there's no lessons pertaining to the first house. So overall health, he's fine. His appearance, fine. Okay. But we also have to look into the shadow stuff, where it ties in the ascendant with the descendant, right? I'll scoot this over because I want to kind of like, okay, so the descendant and ascendant are related. So he has it in Capricorn. Typically what this means, if you have ascendant in Cancer, descendant in Capricorn, it means that you grew up in a sort of a household or environment, growing up in general, not necessarily family, but kind of, yeah. This one kind of pertains more to the family. Of course, it is Cancer, but definitely more about the experiences you have growing up that is a lot of restrictions, a lot of limits, a lot of, you have to behave in a certain way, has to be, reputation was a big thing, has like face value, you have to save face kind of thing, you have to be proper and prim, you have to be very like Capricorn, very much like, like, poised, kind of proper, kind of like classy sort of. You have to be in a certain way that is not like just let loose and instinctive and emotional. So everything was also kind of distant, and people in the household or the experience he's had is kind of like, this is this way, this is kind of strict. There's a lot of discipline, strictness to it. So this is why in Cancer he tries to appear unseen, because it's opposing sign. It's our shadow, right? When you have Cancer and the Sun, you want the world to see you as also kind of the same way because of how you grew up, but it's kind of like the opposite of that. That's a shadow. It's what we don't want to be. It's a part of us that we refuse to hide, and that we don't. So in this case, he kind of, you could say that he neglected, or he shoved it under the pillow, or you hid that part of yourself, that aspect of your persona, your part of being human in this form, in this 3D world, to be that kind of disciplined person, or that kind of like strict kind of, people that can, probably some people, people that can, a person that people can rely on. So, so it's been kind of buried under, but now when you awaken, it's part of the process of accepting your shadow. It's accepting both sides, that you can be strict, but you can also be, you can let loose. You can be you can also embrace your own sort of tyranny. You can embrace your own, wise self, old self. That's very Capricorn. But you're going to embrace your young side, your more playful side, your more based on just emotions and feelings, and like, just, yeah. So total opposite. Embracing both will help us to be more whole. With his descendant, though, of course, this is the mask that he puts on when it comes to relationship. This definitely comes off as the serious sort of thing, but it was in 24 degrees. It almost looks like here that the 3 planets here, it's actually technically a stellium, because they're all literally conjunct each other. Each planet, Mercury, Neptune, and pallas-athena, are affecting each other. They're not actually close to the descendant. It almost looks like it, but it's not. So we're not worrying about that. And when we jumped into this one, we kind of went straight into this because he had questions about it. But what we're going to do is we're going to go tie back into how the ascendant is in terms of, your ascendant is your mask. Right? It's kind of like extension. It's the outward extension of your personality. Both your sun and both the sun and the moon. So your personality is like that. The soul is like the moon is your soul. So it's kind of like where you kind of have that sort of progression throughout time. It's that it's tied to ancestry, it's tied to your history, it's tied to your heritage, all those things that are moon. Okay, people who have known about the moon is like this thing that you carry on from your past. It could be your past lives, it could be past ancestry, it could be just your older life when you were younger. Doesn't matter, it's past stuff. It's always about nostalgia, it's always about those kind of things. It's also about the feelings, all those kind of things, moods, vibration, magnetism, senses, the need to touch, all those kind of things. That's the moon. So your deeper emotions, physical thing, I guess you could say sort of physical. Yeah, it is physical. It's definitely instinct, definitely emotions rooted in that. So people look at the moon and right away they're like, there's something about it that's hidden. It can be dark as well. There is the light and dark side to everything. Right? Again, this is shadow. But we're going to go into the sun, because the sun is your personality, it's your identity. So we look into the sun, and the sun is actually here for him. It's Pisces. But before we even jump into that, we're going to go in between this whole thing, because even though we're going to go into the sun, technically we should go into the moon. Why? Because the moon rules Cancer, and the moon is ruling his chart. His whole chart is his what's called natal chart ruler is the moon. So How does he appear to the world, or rather, how does he package himself to appear to the world? His soul chose to do that, and directly his soul itself, literally, the moon was in Leo. So he's not just a Cancer kind of ascended person. He doesn't come off just like this kind of like mysterious, or even not necessarily mysterious, but like hidden. But also in a way, when they start to get to kind of know him, it sort of appears right away, right after. The sun almost hides itself in this case. Not really hide itself, but the sun is not as visible as it is. It kind of comes right after. I'll show you why. So the moon comes in first, because that's what's showing here. Cancer, it's what he can choose to reveal that, or he can choose not to. You know, that's the crab, right? He's gonna put the shell on, remove the shell, or kind of expose a bit of the shell again, you know, so it's a choice. So with the moon there in Leo, he does come off a little more playful, more childlike, more probably a little bit of, there's that dominant sort of feel to it, a leadership quality as well. He comes off maybe more like leadership, excuse me, but also like executive sort of feel, you know. Managers, when it comes to managers, like leadership type of managers, that's very Leo. But it's also ruled by the sun. The sun is like shining ball of, it's a star, right? It's the, you know, it's the king. It's the one that rules the entire solar system. When I say rules, I don't mean like literally rule, but it provides a generous amount of energy. It's, the sun is our vitality. The sun is what we feel, what we're drawn to, what we do for ourselves, what we feel, what we sense, and what we intuit, that makes us happy, that makes us sort of, that gives us a childlike joy, right? Because his moon is there, his moon is ruled by the sun, and ergo, because the moon rules Cancer, it's literally kind of just go whoosh, it's a kind of a trickling effect, or it's a domino effect. It kind of goes there. If you can feel what I'm trying to say, great, right? So the moon is in Leo, or the moon was in Leo, conjunct his Juno, but Juno retrograde. So he probably goes through emotional experiences, particularly in the emotional ups and downs, and when he questions his own loyalty to himself, loyalty to his emotions, loyalty, or when I say loyalty, I don't necessarily mean loyalty, I mean like commitment, what's the word I'm looking for? It's similar to loyalty. It's like you're with it. You're just with it. You're there. You're attached to it. You know, with the emotions, the experience of emotional ups and downs with the moon. He commits himself to kind of understand it, but he intuits it because it is in Juno. Juno in Leo is very much a very loyal placement. But because it's in retrograde, he kind of questions his own, probably his connection, probably, like to not only himself, his own emotions, like what they mean for him and what they actually feel like, it's how they feel in terms of, you know, it's like the whole aspect of marriage, the whole aspect of long-term commitment, loyalty, devoutness, vows, those kind of things. It's very Juno. Having it retrograde means that he kind of questions that, where that placement is. Where is it? It feels kind of like uncertain. So the emotions kind of vibrate to that, and he senses that there's something there, particularly with the second house thing. So his own self-worth, his own ability to earn through efforts, gains and losses, his ability to process what it means to value his own needs and basic needs and food and spiritual needs possibly also, right? So it could be any types of usual needs, but in this particular one, it's more earthy needs. It's more pride, the need to have pride, the need to have sort of just kind of, his pride is definitely affected here because the sun rules his moon. So I guess when he loses money, or when he's sort of like has gains or money, it's affecting his pride. It makes him sort of like feels accomplished. It's like, oh, I did this through my own efforts. I did this. I earned this. I actually. So there's a lot of like, at least in his early years, that's what it would be like. He's experienced that, especially when he was a child, when he has a childlike approach to experiencing life itself. It's like, this is my thing. This is my thing. But it's like, it's not so much about the possession itself. It's about the ability to intuitively say, oh, okay, I was able to accomplish, I was able to get this. It could be that it's not necessarily possession, material possession, but also a childlike, a possession of your own innocence, possession of your own intuition as well, possession of possibly power, right? Control, maybe some sort of like that whole like I feel joy. So if to him it feels like maybe these kind of possessions are more representative. It's more symbolic through the ability to be just well out there, and just also probably a bit of risk taking, a little bit. So there's Juno there. So but there is that questioning sort of thing. But he knows how to work with that, because even though it feels kind of questionable, he knows how to work with that Juno energy, which is like, and with Moon there, he's familiar with that sort of kind of, he knows how to stick with it and say, okay, well, this is not working for me. That doesn't give me joy. Fine, forget that. Let's move on. Right? Any aspects to his ascendant, of course, is going to change a bit of this as well. So how he packages himself to the world. Ascendant 24 degrees. We already did the descendant. So he has his Mars square. Oh, sorry. His Mars is square. I'll show you right here. Mars square his ascendant. So there must be also, like, how he appears probably can be seen as sort of unpredictably, well, not sort of, he might have sort of had concerns with sudden, like, not sudden, what do you call this? Being easily judged, or he kind of judges himself. He has this maybe irritability. At least when he was young, he probably felt like how he should portray himself to kind of reflect his own reputation, because the Mars is also here in the 10th house. Right? So, and it's not just that, but like a lot of assertive issues. Probably people see him as kind of maybe sometimes assertive, maybe not so assertive. So there's issues with assertion, issues with initiative, issues with probably, yes, again, anger, irritability, emotions that are kind of just explode. Probably also like specific, because this pertains to the body as well, maybe accidents. Accidents like cuts, bruises, like scrapes, all those kind of things he experienced when he was a child, and it kind of made him feel like maybe I don't want to be, it affected his reputation. His Mars is in the 10th house, right? But also because Cancer rules the 4th house, is expressed through family issues, right? We have here what Virgo rules the 4th house. So he was definitely expected to be the kind of the one who just follows orders, follows the routine, follows just habits, follows, just probably the good boy, the one that's probably also very clean. He has to be very clean, conscious about his health. That ties actually right into the Capricorn sort of feel to it. It's very earthy. But you have Cancer ruling the 4th house, so we look into this one. But we also have what's called the intercepted sign of Libra. He had to be the peacemaker, besides the whole. So his first role, his expected main role, was to be kind of more passive and just flexible, adaptable because of Virgo there. But at the same time, the peacekeeper, to kind of keep things in order, maybe at peace and harmony, but also clean, but also like perfect in a certain way. Right? Virgo and Libra kind of share those qualities. So, but because it's intercepted, he wasn't able to fully come out onto the stage of the 4th house, right? We talked about this with him. I said, oh yeah, so the fourth house, the houses are the stages, the where, and then the signs are the how and the why, and the planets are the what. They're the actors. If there's no planets, there's no real issue. There's no real thing to worry about. There's nothing to, it doesn't really activate anything. However, we do have Haumea here, and I'm not going to talk about Haumea because Haumea is something new to me. I don't know really to get it myself. So that's something else altogether. But so far, because it's a kind of minor planet, the big issue here is that it was intercepted. Libra was intercepted here. Therefore, the fourth house was also intercepted. Oh, sorry, the sign was intercepted. Therefore, the house was also intercepted. So in this case, yeah, he felt like he couldn't actually be part of the. He felt maybe that there was a disconnect in the family, or he wasn't able to be really part of it, or he wasn't able to show up in that family environment. Okay, that's the general gist of that. Definitely, yeah, the peacekeeper, the passive one, the kind of the passive and the pacifist. Okay. So we looked into that. So the fourth house is connected to his ascendant. But let's see what else aspected his ascendant right here. So we have the Mars already. We already talked about that. Oh, okay. Questions of natural ability to be more individualistic and more, because we have here the three Liliths. The three Liliths are in Pisces. One is 19 degrees 20, and the other one is in 20 as well. Perfect. Yeah, kind of a perfect. Yeah, it's a perfect conjunction with the. Not the Lilith, mean Lilith. So that means it was. I don't know. I don't really want to go into that much into Lilith because I'm still new to it. I'm kind of still understanding it. But the way I see it is like you have Dark Moon Lilith here. You have the Astro Lilith, or rather, mean Lilith, and then you have the. What's that one called? The other Lilith? Oh, there's technically 4, but 3 in the middle one, the second stage, so to speak. Apparently, is like split into 2, and again, that's a whole other story. But the point is that it's definitely like trying to his ascendant. So he has this natural ability to be more. Not giving into labels, being his own self, not sticking with gender roles or gender stereotypes. And I actually talked to him. When I talked to him, he has this sort of like he's very kind of, you could probably say, you know how women kind of come out androgynous? He's kind of like that for male, sort of. So he has that appearance of like, you might think he's gay, but he's not. Apparently, that's what he tells me. So he appears that way. So because if he's comfortable with just, or at least it's a comfortable placement. You have, if we were to look at least one of the Liliths here and go into that and try it, it's a comfortable placement. It's natural ability to just know where to, or what to do with that energy. So his appearance, how he packages himself, is very much affected by his natural approach to being individualistic, non-labelist, so to speak, non-conformist, and just get kind of like, fuck it, I don't care, right? So, but in a very Piscean way. So it's very still like loving. His very approach is very warm-hearted. It's kind of, it's ruled, it definitely, his Liliths are ruled by Neptune / Jupiter. So what that would mean for his Lilith, specifically his Lilith, also his Venus, because Venus right here is actually Venus actually is it's also trying to his ascendant. So that means that his ability to be more non-conformist, non-labels, that Lilith sort of stuff is expressed through that loving, unconditional loving that Pisces loves to give. His Neptune ruled Venus is there, and also Jupiter ruled Venus, a belief in expansion, having faith and having trust in the universe and bringing it down to earth. And when it comes to that, it's his expression is the way he packages himself through the ascendant, or again through the ascendant, is definitely more like, he comes off very like warm-hearted, very welcoming, very accepting, and very like, people see that right away. That's probably one of the first things they see, besides the fact that they might not be able to read him. It's right away, it's kind of like they see that, but they're not sure. And I kind of sense that too. Just like, okay, he appears like he's very friendly, he's very outgoing, he's very open, he's very open-minded, he's very like clear about what it feels like it's clear, but at the same time there's something there that's just hidden. And that's where his childlike thing comes out, where the moon in Leo, where the more dominating side of him kind of might come out, which comes out later once you get to know him. But in this case, I don't really know him that well. So there you go. Right, so very interesting placement here. So the Lilith plus, all three Liliths plus his Venus is like that whole, like, he knows where he's at in a very sort of like, he expresses it in a very loving way, very sort of like gentle about it. It's a gentle sign. And it's actually in Venus in Pisces is actually exalted. It's in its rise, so that means it is actually it has a different tone to it than just Taurus or Libra. It's in a way the love is elevated, where it's Venus people in Pisces tend to, especially if it's a trine or connected somehow to the ascendant, whatever aspect it is, they appear to not only idealize connections and relationships, but idealize worth as well, your self-worth, your what you value and what your pleasure is. So he's probably people might assume that he likes things that kind of, well, it's not food, but it can be because it's pleasure. So some things like sexual expression or sensuality comes off more like in a very charming but sort of like illusory or sort of magical. He comes like kind of magical and very, people might be drawn to him, and he's feels like they want to kind of like eternally make love to him. And I kind of sense that too. It's like, oh, okay. It's very gentle, so gentle that kind of just very welcoming. You kind of just want to be like in the clouds kind of with him. And I kind of thought about this, and just to be completely honest here, I was just like, oh, he's cute. And also like in a very, like you want to just not only kiss him, but you want to kind of just like, you want to be there and just be there unconditionally. So there's that Piscean sort of magic. There's that sort of, it's ruled by Neptune, but also Jupiter. Now what we can do is jump into the actual, because I don't think, hold on, I don't think there's any other, oh we do, okay, before we go back to that, I might be jumping here and there, whatever, that's part of the process. Remember, when you're looking at astrology, you want to look at the whole picture, and if you have questions about that, type in the comments. Or I don't know, it's the way it works is you have to connect what's there. You look at the planets, what rules, what it's ruling currently, and what it naturally rules, and then what it also, and the signs as well. So, and everything is connected. So his expressions of that comes through naturally when his Venus ascendant sort of trine there is not just in that regard. So because you have Venus there, and Venus naturally rules the second house. So it's kind of funny because it's connected here. The Venus there is his own ability to be more childlike in a very sort of, his soul feels at home with being childlike and also being kind of like not so concerned about money and kind of just letting it go and trusting that it's okay. And money comes to him. I would say in this case, money comes to him, joy comes to him because he's very childlike in that regard, especially how he appears, yes, but also regards to his second house stuff. But it's also childlike, but also very like trusting and innocent, very Neptunian, very like, because of Pisces, Venus was in Pisces up here, right? So that means that because Venus rules the second house, there's the way Venus is expressed is not just through his ninth house stuff with his visions, his hopes, his big business stuff, foreign things. When he comes across foreign people, he doesn't just come across that way. Like he's the Venus Pisces, I'm talking about that one. It also kind of expressed indirectly through the second house, where it is how do you call this? It is yeah, it is like that kind of very loving sort of way. So he has a very gentle, trusting approach, but also in a way also like knows what he wants, because that's Leo. Leo is very, you can say, charismatic. That's the term that comes to me right now. It's charismatic. When you have Leo and Pisces combined, they kind of have this sort of, they come across, they approach you in a very, or they feel, and they get, you approach them in a, they approach you in a very gentle, but also like, you know that they're in control, and that's okay because they're so charming and they're so welcoming, they're so generous. Right? They have that energy. So, but because you also have Pisces, Pisces rules his ninth house, generally speaking. Right? Pisces rules his ninth house. So definitely a lot of that trusting, sort of unconditional love and faith and all that stuff, that's Piscean. We also have to look into Neptune. But before we go into Neptune, we also have to look into the 12th house. Because that's the first thing that hit me. It's funny because Jupiter is in retrograde. And it's actually trine to his sun. So with that being said, he kind of comes across there's that mystery side to him where he doesn't know how to, he naturally knows how to process subconsciously his own abilities for growth. Like he grows in a very, he has a sort of subconscious approach to it, because it is trine, it's a comfortable placement. If it was square, it would be like, oh, I don't know how to work with this. Because naturally you have Jupiter in retrograde. You can see that retrograde. You can see the small R right there in 12th house. Jupiter in retrograde, I mean, just like this inner questioning and sort of uncertainty and awkwardness regarding your own ability to grow, to expand, to believe, to have faith, to know kind of where also your limits are. And indulgence is also part of this, right? So subconsciously, because it's in retrograde, he kind of questions where and how and where and when he should actually feel like he should be able to relax and be at, feel leisurely and just like give over. It should probably kind of appear through his dreams. He feels maybe a little more comfortable in his dreams, and that's where the sun, he probably feels like he can venture out into the world, into everything else. That's very idealistic of Pisces, his sun right there, and feel happy and joyful with it in his dreams. Or when he's like in his quiet time, when he's alone, when he's probably also, he told me about this, he's like, doing drugs in the past, right? So he kind of escaped through that. So any sort of like clandestine stuff, clandestine activities, secret things that you kind of don't want others to see, you kind of enjoy that. But now it's more like admitting that and seeing that you can actually ascend and transcend all that stuff and still have that, leisurely sort of feel when it comes to, it doesn't have to be that secret. It kind of be more like a personal thing, a place where he can meditate. So whenever he meditates, this is a place where he's able to process that ability for growth and expansion and change, and have that sort of belief in himself that he's really connected and guided. Right? And it's funny because Pisces naturally rules the 12th house, here in this case, Cancer rules Gemini rules the 12th house. So you have two signs ruling the 12th house here. Because we look at the cusp of the 12th house, it's Gemini. So it's all about, a lot of it is getting information regarding all that he needs to do so that he can proceed with what is and learn about his own ability for growth, and also his north node for his like where he's headed, and get information regarding all that stuff because it's Gemini. And just kind of getting the facts straight, right? Being more factual, being a little bit more practical, being more logical, right? Because his north node is in Gemini. We're going to go back to the north node here, but definitely like it's 12th house stuff where he's able to process all that information that he's going through and like towards his future. When he's like by himself, when he's kind of like has more time to process things and definitely through meditation, even dreams as well. And when you're dreaming, Dolores Cannon stuff, it's not just Dolores Cannon, it's true, right? When you're dreaming, you're actually traveling. So you're actually exploring the side not of your own subconscious, but how the true subconscious is actually a representation of inner representation of the actual part of the whole conscious revealing itself through humanity. I don't know if that makes sense. Look up Dolores Cannon and also Eckhart Tolle's stuff. That's the way I understand it. So, what else? So Gemini rules, okay. Then we look into his Mercury, because Mercury rules his 12th house right now. Mercury rules his 12th house, right here. But Mercury was in Aquarius, right here. I don't know if you can see that. But Mercury was his 12th house, conjunct, there's a stellium with Neptune and pallas-athena. So that's where it comes into play, where his 12th house, he's able to meditate. So therefore he's able to process his own way of perception, the way he perceives when it's reality itself here in the 3D world. Because you have here naturally this stellium. When you have this conjunction right here, the stellium, it's a guided it's an inner wisdom he gets. He understands that everything is connected. Neptune kind of guides that, and provides these magic stuff, these illusions. They're not necessarily illusions, but can be, it depends. He has no Neptune's, his Neptune is opposition to his moon, so that means sometimes he might, there might be sort of this imbalance between trusting his perception and trusting his instincts. So he has to learn how to balance those and seeing what's a little bit more earth-like. That's the Leo, what's a little bit more, how can I be more childlike about it? Instead of just always idealizing it, instead of always just going towards facts and idealizing information and science about it, and kind of just always going with the facts, and just trusting it. Trusting that here, pallas-athena tells us to also kind of balance things and to strategically battle that sort of inner wisdom, and that everything is connected, especially with Neptune there, and the perceptions that he has. Maybe the facts are presented to him, not necessarily so that he can question it or that they're the end-all be-all of things, but rather because the facts are shown so that maybe he can actually balance that with, he's provided with the facts of what he needs to discover for himself, how he relates with himself, 7th house, and know who his open enemies, openly know who his enemies are, meaning his shadow. What he needs to work with through his shadow, what he needs to work with to understanding, accepting other people. This is where acceptance comes in as well. So he has this perceptive ability to get the information and have science-backed information, or, have this sort of intellect, this sort of natural, spark of, poof, an idea, and, oh, okay, now I understand about this person, or maybe about myself. 7th house doesn't necessarily always mean other people. No, it's yourself. What you see in others is a mirror. Others become a mirror to yourself. So the 7th house reveals that to him. So, and we're not just talking about the descendant. Descendant is more relation. Again, remember, it's the mask and the face and all that stuff. The role, the front end of that house and what presents that house. Every cusp does that. But the house itself is the embodiment of where it is, what's happening in this area of his life. So, yeah, so he has to balance that and figure out what he senses in terms of when his self-worth is challenged in the 2nd house. When his worth is challenged, when his own values, his own sort of, that part of the egoic self, where you're questioning your self-worth, right? He has to find a way to balance that with the perception he has of himself, therefore his own enemies with himself, and what others represent that when others become a mirror for him or become a teacher for him. He in turn also becomes that teacher. He becomes a mirror for others as well. So with that in mind, we have, because of this placement right here, Mercury ruling this 12th house, Mercury in that placement itself tells him to trust that his role in his own his whole 12th house thing, his role, his mask. Is remember the cusp. We're talking about the cusp here right this second. That he'll learn to eventually trust that and let go and say, here are the facts, okay, but don't dwell on them. Here are the facts, or the information, maybe not just the facts, but the information he gets, and kind of work with that and be more grounded with it, but at the same time balance that with his own ability to trust. His south node was in 24 degrees Sagittarius, right? So he has to balance his past life stuff, his experiences, his natural abilities, his natural gifts, towards understanding his future, towards understanding his destiny, his fate, the choices that he makes, towards finding the courage to go out there and take the leap of faith in this case, but in this case leap of informed faith. It's not blind faith. You can't do that. Yeah, so you don't want to have blind faith. So yeah, so that ties into where Pallas-Athena, actually Neptune, provides information that, information can be downloaded, but at the same time work with the earthy information you get here. So both experience and so vertical with the horizontal. We talked about this a little bit. Now going back to how the 12th house is ruled by Pisces, because Jupiter is there and Jupiter trines his sun right here. We also look into Neptune again. So again, here now the Neptune becomes the focus. He also gets information in terms of where he's headed, in terms of not just North Node stuff, but definitely like his visions and aspirations, like what he hopes to get, his, that kind of feel of Jupiterians. And Jupiter naturally rules the 9th house. But it's Jupiter trines his sun here. So Jupiter, the expression of the 9th house is 9th house issues, or 9th house things that he does with the 9th house: higher education, spirituality, law, faith, expansion, big business, opportunity, optimism, all those things is expressed also through his processing of when he has alone time, and therefore he has to trust that, definitely. But at the same time, again, be informed, right? He also has guidance through Ceres here, so being able to be his own parent and being his own, being the child and parent yourself, and knowing and also being okay with the fact that you have losses and gains, and that's totally fine. And Ceres represents in our psyche the ability to take care of ourselves, right? Self-care, unconditional love to yourself, and accepting that okay, that's what it is. That's fine, and really being okay with it. Especially because it's all of these planets right here. Sun and Ceres are not conjunct to his Venus and Lilith, but they're ruled by Neptune. So Neptune, because it's through Pisces. So here again, Neptune reveals that. But Neptune was conjunct these other signs, these other planets. So it's really about having more than just faith, and really it kind of goes back and forth here between the 7th house, his 9th house, and his 12th house. It's kind of like his shadow work combined with meditation and trust and belief and faith. So shadow work is probably an issue here as well. He's not an issue, but he has to embrace all of his stuff, the light and the dark, everything that he sees in others, everything that's mirrored, and what he sees in others, he should also accept that. So anything that probably is not Piscean, meaning like the opposite side, most likely revealed through Virgo, like say when other people get too technical, embrace that. There's a technical side to you. I'm talking to you right now, so read. So embracing all that and saying, okay, what is the gift behind that? Find the gifts within it. Ceres is probably going to show you that as well. Ceres is showing me here, like, yeah, find the gifts. Like Ceres loses her daughter half of the year. When it's fall, winter, it goes back to Hades, because Hades raped her, meaning like he possessed her, he kind of controlled that. That's the representation of the rape. He has power over her, and therefore Persephone, or that aspect of the loss itself, goes back to that Plutonian thing, which is like the underworld and processing. So you have to be okay with those things. And I'm pretty sure he does too, so because he naturally does that. However, I see here, let's go back here, 17 degrees, Venus, and also his sun. So that means that it's all, pretty much all of them square. All of these planets are actually, well, except for, no, just Venus right now. Just Venus and his Sun and Ceres are all square Saturn right here. Saturn's are limitations. Saturn's are, Saturn teaches us to kind of hold off and say, wait, watch out for what happens next. Kind of having those boundaries and limitations, and learning from those, and kind of having faith in the fact that you don't always have to grow. Because Saturn is like after Jupiter, but they both are about faith. But when I say faith, as in for Saturn, is faith in Saturn is the kind of the patience. You have to have the patience, and you have to kind of will it as well. With Saturn in Gemini, it's also having patience with the information that you get, the way people communicate with you, particularly in the 11th house, because it's a social thing, it's your community. So the information he gets from his community, the things we're in right now, we're kind of in the same community, having those kind of patience, and maybe you don't get the information right away, and that's okay. But Vesta here protects you, because Vesta is conjunct in Saturn. So that devotion and commitment towards your own discipline, your own ability to be patient, your own ability to create limits and say it's okay. And wisdom can come out of that. Otherwise, if we let go of that completely, karma plays a role here. You create more karma if you don't trust what's there, right? Now, we had this sort of discussion earlier on, but I think it was him I told, that when it comes to the planets, it's almost like they're gods. Because I saw this post on Instagram, and they're talking about how the gods are something we could use. And what I mean by that is that the gods are concepts of an understanding of conceptualization in the human psyche. That's what we understand the world to be. It's the labels. The labels are the gods. Or gods are the labels, basically. But our true self is not. This is why there's that sort of like, it's weird, because the gods, in this case, because they're more like a petty representation of a 3D world. When I say petty, I don't necessarily mean negative, but in a way, that too. Right? They represent that whole, whether you are religious or you have faith or whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that the gods kind of, in a way, kind of have a correlation with the planets. And this is why the planets are named after the gods. It kind of makes sense. It's not just coincidental, So working with the gods in this case is part of your psyche, part of subconscious, is part of the split representation of, and I'm not going to say the one God. I'm not going to say that because that's religious sounding. But definitely like the one consciousness, meaning all of us also. Right? When you say you are the sons of God or sons of the universe, children of the universe, it's the same thing. You can call it whatever you want. Labels. It's exactly what it is. All these labels, we conceptualize things as humans. So you work with it. So, and the chart, in your natal chart, like I said before, and I've mentioned it to Reed as well, that when it comes to the chart, it's your soul contract. It's what your soul, when your soul as a connection of the divine, meaning the whole thing. You are a part of that, even though you might consider yourself a speck, but the speck is the body, really. It's like, so the point I'm making is that, besides the digression right now, the point is that we can always make use of these symbolisms, these planets, to kind of understand the choices that we make, and the choice that we made to be in this form, this planet, in this lifetime. Okay, so let's go back to that. Vesta. So Vesta is where we get protected as well. Vesta is where we find our own sort of inner devotion. I'm going to look back into my notes here. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Well, this one takes a bit of time. Okay. Now let's go all the way to Vesta. So Vesta. Okay, so devotion, commitment. So where we make promises to our own spiritual wholeness or journey. Okay, when I say promise, yeah, it's devotion. When I say promise, I mean like you really, you make yourself sacred. You process things that are sacred. You make things that are, you purify it. In other words, it's sanctity, right? So that's a Vesta represents sanctity as well. So the sanctity of Gemini, in this case, the sanctity of information, the sanctity of transmission of facts, information. Information is not just information, it's knowledge that can be turned into wisdom. That's basically what Saturn is telling us here, right? But knowledge about experiences and going through, because Saturn rules matter. So anything that he experiences in this matter world, 3D world, he has to learn through that and have patience with it. But with the devotion and the kind of like, he's able to do that naturally. It is in conjunct, right? You have a conjunct right here. You don't see the conjunct aspect, but that's fine. There is, right? Vesta, 3 degrees. Saturn, 8 degrees. Okay. Sorry, that thing wasn't for read. It's for anyone. So, what do you call this? Okay, so it's Venus square. Oh, so it's Sun series square is that. So he kind of has issues with where he's headed towards the future, his visions, his ability to be optimistic, his higher learning, maybe higher education, maybe university. There's limitations. He probably also imposed that on himself, or it was imposed on by his old greater community, and saying maybe like, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you should do this, you should do that. So he kind of probably still goes through that and said, like he should, but Saturn, you have to find the balance in this case. This challenge helps you to find the balance between self-care and at the same time, do you have too much self-care, or do you also have too much limitations, or your fears? Really, Saturn rules fears as well. If you don't do that, you're going to have this karmic, you're going to get karma. It's an imbalance. When you have the balance and you accept the wholeness of it all, that there's a time and place for when you should pause and think, okay, process the information, kind of process it through, because Gemini rules thought as well. It rules the mind, cerebral, right? So here Saturn is putting a dampener, so to speak, and saying, okay, well, what gives you joy, but at the same time seeing where that can lead you, so that it's actually real, right? It rules matter, real, meaning like not necessarily real in the actual real sense, but real in your journey throughout this matter life of 3D world. You can't just escape and go through the ether and forget about the 3D world. You can't come to 5D and 6, all that stuff without dealing with the 3D. You have to work with the 3D. That's really what it's saying here. Okay, but we have to go back to Venus in terms of restrictions and limitations with relationships. It definitely, there's a square there, but we also see, do you see that triangle there? So his Saturn is opposite his Pluto. So Pluto here was in Sagittarius. So people in Pluto in Sagittarius, we already talked about this more in person, but I'm going to do this for the video. Pluto in Sagittarius are people who love, not really, who have this sort of a desire to have genuine risks. When I say genuine risk, it's not just risk for the sake of risk. It's like, what is risk? What is optimism? What is adventure? What is living life? What is even athleticism? What is sport? What is activity? What is all that stuff? What is higher learning? What is higher education? What is philosophy? What is faith? What is law? What is all those things? Pluto unfolds all that and says, okay, Sagittarius, what do you want? What do you really want? What do you fucking want? Right? Because otherwise, the poison, the underbelly of the underworld and all that disgusting virus stuff will seep out, and because we're not working with Pluto, we're not surrendering to the power that is about. Pluto is power. It's the higher vibration of Mars. It's willpower. Okay, meaning that it is about understanding what power is. If we don't understand power, when we don't understand power, we look for it. When we do understand power, in other words, when we accept it, we don't look for it. It comes to us. Right? It's surrendering to death. It's surrendering, dying before dying. Pluto represents also a part of meditation, that real meditation, when you're giving into the moment and you're just saying, this is not real. Meaning, when I say this is not real, it is real. The form is real, but it's not. It shouldn't be the real in terms of how we perceive it to be real. It's real in the sense that, meaning like it's real because we feel it physically, but our perception of it, our interpretation of it, is the one that's only in the mind. The mind itself is also real. The thoughts are real, but it's an energy. Everything is energy. So it's kind of its own place, and there's a connection. Yes, everything is definitely connected. However, how we work with those little pockets of energy, because think of it as like you have the connection, there's this umbilical cord, so to speak, between each conceptualization that we create as humans. Pluto is a conceptualization. Power is conceptualization. What is power? Right? So Pluto wants to reveal that and say, in this case, regarding Sagittarian things. Again, adventure, fun, athleticism, sports, activities, optimism, growth, expansion, business affairs, business things, a church as a, I guess you can say a church as a belief or something like that. I don't know, whatever. The point is it's Sagittarian. And so it kind of reveals to that what is that? In other words, also having unbounded faith, right? Because that's Jupiter. It's an expansive faith, right? And but it's in opposition to his Mars, also his not Mars, to his Saturn. It kind of creates that whole like, well, how do you work with those? How do you balance the two together? Well, it definitely means that this sort of desire to have a genuine approach to life itself and everything that is Sagittarian has to come into balance with getting the right information and getting your facts straight, and being able to devote yourself to that also, because you have Vesta there, being able to be committed to that. So Vesta adds a bit of oomph to Saturn, whilst Pluto actually, technically in this case, Pluto is conjunct his South Node. So his South Node is being pulled towards always kind of finding ways. When Pluto is conjunct to South Node, it kind of feels like he's used to being alone. He's used to being by himself. He's used to, it's a comfort zone. It's kind of a, like, if it's his fallback place. It's like, okay, time to regenerate, time to regenerate. But you know, that's too much when Saturn goes like, well, are you sure? Isn't that too much? You can only regenerate so much, like a battery. You can't do that. You can only rest so much. It's time to sort of like get yourself a little bit out there as well. And we actually see that because when I say out there, it necessarily mean like out there. Kind of find yourself where the reality is and kind of see where you process your emotions, specifically because you have Saturn here. Saturn rules Sagittarius. So meditative stuff, any sort of clandestine activity, any sort of time for himself is affected by how he processes emotions and how he deals with his own family within himself, like his family self, like how he can be his own mother, father, whatever, right? With Jupiter in retrograde, again, it's an internal process. So he's able to internally process that. But Saturn, again, pulls at it and says, wait. What about what your friends say? What about how you able to expand this to the bigger picture, the bigger whole, towards humanity, right? 11th house is about humanitarian things. How do you so he's able to balance genuineness and truth with the information he gets, and kind of finding the limits and knowing where he should say, okay, well, do I believe in what you say? Is this what I want for my community or the bigger picture, or the world out there? Is this what? So he has to find a way to balance inner, like, personal truth and what he's already used to in the past, without being so hard on himself and being so alone, and at the same time join the rest of the world without also being too giving, right? So there's a balance there. Pluto in here creates that balance with Pluto in here creates that balance with Saturn, so that he becomes more grounded at the same time. trusting his own instincts, his own power, and trusting the power that is the whole itself. Okay, but it also squares his Venus, so that kind of ties back into relationships with the future, people that he has business relationships with, not necessarily business per se, but like opportunity or opportunistic sort of experiences. I don't know if that's right. Anything relating to opportunity, anything to do with higher education, philosophy, those kind of things that are Jupiterian, right? Having that leap of faith and saying, okay, he needs to work with those energies. See, here we have a grand T-square. It's actually a mutable T-square, sort of, not really. Yeah, a mutable T-square. So that means he has to adapt to the changes that come to his life and say, okay, I don't necessarily have to always be kind and passive and, yes, to be honest, like gullible in relationships, and he has to kind of know when to draw the boundaries. And also use that truth, that's Pluto, and say, okay, this is where you are and this is where I am. And I think he's already learning that. Maybe next time we'll go through his progression chart, but in any case. So we kind of already explained what this is. I'm not going to go through much more of this T-square, but it is, if for those who know what this is, it's really a balancing of where the energies have to be expressed, particularly because Venus here pulls at the two planets. So what that means is like it kind of probably feels like he has to like seesaw his way through his community self and his own pursuits, because it's 11th and the 5th house. So the love he gets and the love he gives, he has to balance that and see, okay, now I have this relationship with myself and my whole self, and therefore I know where to draw boundaries and I know where not to draw boundaries. So it has to balance. That's basically what it is. If you look at the triangle, it's actually, if you know how the seesaw like this right here, and you have the panel or whatever it is, he has to balance that. He has to learn to appreciate that and learn how to, he has to sit there in Venus and say, so Venus here becomes the balancer in a way, a kind of a catalyst for balance. Okay. Possibly also the Sun. So Venus, his relationship with himself, is able to, when he realizes his worth, yeah, he definitely shines a lot more, especially with big business stuff like that we're in right now. What else is there? So okay, so it all kind of ties together because his Taurus rules his 11th house, so it ties back to Venus right there. it's kind of already moot. It's obvious. And what rules his 5th house is Scorpio, which is right here where Pluto is. So that's kind of, again, that's obvious. We're not going to go through these other planets right here because those are things I'm still new to. I just put it in his chart because I feel like, just in case in the future when he goes through it, he could work with that energy. We have here his ability to work with, he can work on processing his wounding with the loss of possibly here like career, something to do with bone, something to do with stability, something to do with success, a wounding and loss in success, and like in terms of reputation as well. His ego is actually sextile to his Sun and Ceres right here. So that means a part of fortune, actually. Part of fortune is still, I don't know, I put in part of fortune here, but as I feel like part of fortune can be used for other reasons. Not really sure. There's something about it. I know that it's something to do with your skills and talents, to be disciplined, all that stuff, where you feel like where you have this sort of, it's more about experiences. And part of fortune is not a heavenly body, it's not a planet, it's a mathematical calculations. It's used originally from, I believe, from when astrology was being used in the Middle East. So it's like an Arabic mathematical calculation or something like that. I'm not sure, but I did put it here. Again, I believe in just in case though. But Chiron is the big one here. And Chiron is the wounding of that. He can process his own joys, so that the wounds becomes his own energy, his own vitality, to become a little more grounded and have actual self-care, and actually say work with series and say, okay, I know work with that. I need time for myself. So a lot of the process that he goes through is definitely like he's able to. He's what do you call it? He can do that. He can. When I say that, what is that? He can. He definitely needs a lot of time being more introverted, in this case, kind of in that regard, so that he may be able to expend that energy extrovertedly. I don't know if that makes sense. But Capricorn rules his Sagittarius rules his 6th house, so his health, regarding health, unconscious habits. So Jupiter here becomes a factor. So any sort of unconscious things he hasn't dealt with comes into play with his 6th house. So that means that if he hasn't learned to process inwardly, being able to accept that sometimes when you get sick, or when you have what do you call this? When you lose things, it could be a health related thing as well. Then what does Chiron rule? It's gonna Chiron rules. We're getting a little bit into medical astrology here. So, well, Sagittarius, first of all, Sagittarius rules, because Sagittarius rules his 6th house. Sagittarius rules, where is Sagittarius from? Hips, thighs, pituitary gland, so sciatic nerves. Sciatic nerves, hips, thighs, pituitary gland, so that area. So if he's not, he should also kind of pay attention to that. If he's not able to learn through that, and it comes into play, and it becomes sort of a, maybe if it's too painful, it kind of like brushes it off. But I don't think he does that, because you have Jupiter here. There's a question of his own belief in himself and what he's given, what he has. But it might be that I find that people with retrograde are able to process things so much that it becomes sort of like, now I get the answer. Even though it's not fully, when a planet is not fully expressed, it's in retrograde. Yeah. So liver as well. Something to do with the liver, something to do with the thighs. So I think that is the pituitary gland. I'm not really sure. I'm not into, not in biology, but something to do with those things. So, but it's also, because it's Capricorn. Capricorn rules knees, that's with teeth, anything to do with the bones, calcium. So, calcium issues. So, let's see if there's any planets aspecting a square. No, you just have the opposition to Chiron here. Chiron opposite is Jupiter. So definitely. So walking. I think in this case he might need to do a lot of walking. Be careful, being careful with that, and seeing that maybe he needs to admit that maybe there's some things that there's limitations. And that's okay. So walking is a good thing. And doing it little by little. If he needs to start walking and starts to run, I don't know if he likes running, but I think maybe that might be the other thing as well. So that has an effect on his, it's also because Jupiter rules the liver. That ties into his Pisces thing. So being careful with addictive things like scapegoating through alcoholism, things that are drugs, anything that can cause addiction. It could be sugar as well. Right? So watching out for those and seeing, okay, where is this really good for me? Do I just believe it's because that's where it becomes I just want to, because I just want to be instinctively I'm hungry. So here, go goes back to the moon. Moon rules his Jupiter. Again, it goes back to those habits. Sweet stuff he probably liked when he was younger. He probably cut down on that, but yeah, he did tell me that he's cutting down on sugar. So, which is a good thing. Because sugar is, Moon and Leo people, they love sweet things. Because it's very childlike. It's childlike stuff, children's stuff. So sugary things, sweet tooth. So watching out for that. So if it's an addiction and becomes like too much, then it affects his liver. So in turn also affects his ability to believe in himself. So again, we need to balance ourselves with what we eat. We're not just what we believe, we're also what we eat. And what we believe about what we eat. Most likely it's a belief, for sure. You know, that's manifestation. But when you believe something, you can't just believe that this alcohol will heal me. That doesn't make sense. What I mean is, the belief is not your egoic belief. The belief comes from trusting that through the meditation stuff. This is why it's in the 12th house. Even though it's clandestine, even though it's hidden, even though it's like hush hush, like, you know, push things aside. It's also the area of our lives when we start to realize it's when we let go, even though we put it aside. I know that doesn't make sense, but when you put it aside and you kind of forget it, it comes back to you. So how do you do that? You accept it by seeing it for what it is, straight on, head on. And this is also what Jupiter is saying. You face it head on, but inwards, and saying, okay, you have the courage, right? It's a little bit of courage as well in there because you also have Jupiter. But because you also have courage through Leo, rules, Moon was in Leo, so it colors his Jupiter. So courage is a part of that as well, right? So, and also because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so he's kind of ties back into that, right? Jupiter co-rules Pisces in the 12th house, so it's also at home here. So we also have issues regarding like understanding and like really accepting that power, which ties back into the opposition to a Saturn, getting the facts right, getting kind of being patient with yourself and trusting, but at the same time getting the facts. So there's always has to be a balance, but also a wholeness. Okay, I think that's it. We don't have a lot to talk about with Mars because Mars is in a comfortable aspect. He definitely knows how to work with that energy. He knows how to knows when to assert himself when he's regenerated enough, right? Aries right there kind of tests his ability and kind of makes him question how he should go about his assertiveness, his initiative, his will to go for it. And Aries kind of puts that into question and say, do you really want this one? You want really? Okay, go ahead. And then lessons are learned through that. You know, when he tries to do things that are probably not too well processed or not thought of, but still balancing that with faith and ability to trust that, you know, he's guided, right? So Aries is still new, so we don't know exactly what she represents. But the way I discovered it, how I discovered it is Aries does represent balance and non-dualism. So it could be that his actions, that in terms of what his angers are, it may not be that anger might be not necessarily be a bad thing. He can be angry when he needs to be. He can be assertive when he needs to be, but not at the expense of like saying, oh, because it's bad or good, or it's male or female or whatever. Again, Aries represents that. It kind of questions that. It's something about Aries about non-duality. And that's similar to pallas-athena and another planet. I totally forgot what it was. But yeah, so definitely something to do with that. But that's all we have for now. I hope that was quite informative for you guys. We didn't really go through his midheaven because that's not really an issue here. His midheaven is, let's take a look. Okay, well, career-wise, because I forgot to mention this, because his 4th house was intercepted, because it intercepted Libra, therefore his house in the 4th house was intercepted. He also felt probably still that he's not able to show up in his, when I say show up, I mean like he's not able to process his reputation, like what he thinks of as his role in life, now how the world sees him, which is also definitely the 10th house stuff, but it's definitely more tied to the midheaven. But definitely, yeah, it's a 10th house thing. So he's not able to, because he wasn't able to be completely there with like for family and being connected, he's also not able to connect with his own career path, his goals, his, you know, what that means for him, like his what do you call that? What's the word? Vocations. And I think where vocations is a little bit more 9th house, but it's just also 10th house as well. So he's still working on that. So it's kind of more the goals he has for the future and how he relates to the community is kind of because it's intercepted, like I said, it kind of is those two houses kind of in a way support it, kind of like creates the process for him. So eventually he'll learn to be more expressive about it. He'll learn to come out in this regard. But with Mars there though, and Mars and Aries there, he's able to at least get some action done, or like, you know, action necessarily mean action, but like a will, he has the willpower for it as well. This trine here to his Uranus, we didn't really talk about Uranus. He's able to work with that energy of change, sudden changes, and he's able to transform with these sudden changes in his life in the 8th house. It was in Aquarius, so therefore it's right at home. But it's also ruled by Saturn, because Saturn rules Aquarius as well. It's co-ruling Aquarius, so that means we're getting the right facts when it comes to his ability to transform, and he just goes for it. But he has to commit to it. He has to really focus on it, because this is a sextile placement. This is a sextile aspect right here. Sextiles are potentials, but it's harmonious. So when it's potential, you can't just wait for it to happen. It's not like a trine. Trine just happens. It's harmonious, but sextiles are like you're waiting for it to you take action. But Mars actually triggers that, so it's like, okay. And Mars is also right at home with Aries right here, so there's nowhere else to go. Well, sort of. But it ties back into his 1st house though, because Mars rules the 1st house. So his expression of his something to do with his body, something to do with which ties back into again his Pluto right here, right? Because it's also trine, but at the same time it's what do you call this? I don't want to say expressed again, but yeah, I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm kind of, that one got me stuck for a bit there. But he definitely knows how to work with that. He can find a way to work with the energy of transformation, which is sudden changes in his life, or where he does weird things. Probably also he does weird things when he's like really like not only by himself, but like in secret, complete secret, like it's hidden, or he's anything to do with Uranus in the 8th house is like fucking weird, okay? And he knows how to work with that energy. He can learn how to work with it. But let's take a look. Is there a trine to his 25 degrees? There is. His North Node. Sorry, right here. North Node. Trine. Right there. Didn't show the line there, but there it is. It's a trine. So he knows how to work with it. So he's also got to embrace his weird fucking side. Like, not just sci-fi weird, not just like Scorpio weird, not just Aquarius weird, but also like dreamy weird, like Piscean weird out of there. But also balancing that, coming down to earth and saying, okay. So he's able to work with that peculiarity, his eccentricity. But now be careful when you have a trine. Remember I told you this. Now I'm talking to you, Reed. When you have a trine placement, sudden things might kind of be opposite of that, or things that are unexpected and might cause you to question, where it's like people who maybe are too overly grounded and not too open to the right facts, possibly those who just ignore it. And so for you, it might be like, I don't know, you might come across people who, as you embrace more of your North Node, as you embrace more of your future, to be a little more grounded with information, or getting the right information. But people who might challenge it and say, oh, you're so fucking weird, like you're out of here. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to work with you. So, with Uranus there, try to kind of, because it becomes so comfortable. And when you're too comfortable, what happens? You become complacent. So watch out for that complacency with always embracing change. Sometimes you just need the stability. Okay? So, anyways, that's what we have so far. There are more things we could definitely talk about, things that I probably have missed. It always happens. But that's all we have for now. We did about an hour, so that's good. I hope that was quite informative. That's all we have for today. And those who, I mentioned it in the original video I was supposed to go post, but those who are curious, this is the Slovakian flag, because I love languages. I do that. And that's my quirky side. I love languages. I love culture. People, yes. But at the same time, I balance that with like, not being with people, being by myself and being with myself. And right, so embracing your shadow. Embrace all of it. Embrace all of it. You're on school Earth school, whatever. And embrace all of it. Peace and love to everyone. I'll see you guys later. Ta-ta. Babu. Bye.